Explain how Azure Storage's change feed feature can be used for auditing and compliance purposes. Azure Storage's change feed allows you to track changes to blobs over time. This feature can be used for auditing and compliance by capturing and analyzing blob-related events, ensuring data integrity and accountability. How can you enforce data retention and compliance using the immutable blob storage feature in Azure Storage? The immutable blob storage feature in Azure Storage allows you to configure a retention policy that prevents blobs from being deleted or modified for a specified period. This ensures compliance with data retention regulations. How can you mitigate the impact of accidental deletions in Azure Blob Storage using soft delete and soft delete for containers? Enabling soft delete and soft delete for containers in Azure Blob Storage retains deleted blobs in containers for a specified period. This safeguards against accidental deletions and provides a recovery window for data restoration. Explain how to configure Azure Blob Storage's access tier for optimal cost management. You can configure Azure Blob Storage's access tier by specifying access rules and transition policies in the lifecycle management settings. By setting appropriate rules, you can automatically move data to cooler or archival tiers based on usage patterns. How does Azure Storage facilitate data import from on-premises environments using Azure Data Box? Azure Data Box is a physical device that allows you to transfer large amounts of data from on-premises environments to Azure Storage. You load your data onto the data box, ship it to Microsoft, and the data is ingested into your Azure Storage account. How can you use Shared Access Signatures (SAS) to delegate access to specific Azure Blob Storage resources? Shared Access Signatures (SAS) allow you to create time-bound and specific permissions for accessing Azure Blob Storage resources. You generate a SAS token with the required permissions and provide it to authorized users, granting them temporary access. Explain how Azure Storage's GeoZone Redundant Storage (GZRS) option enhances data availability. GeoZone Redundant Storage (GZRS) replicates data to a secondary region within the same geographic zone. This option improves data availability by providing redundancy against regional outages while maintaining lower latency compared to cross-region replication. How can you implement data archiving using Azure Blob Storage's archive, access tier, and lifecycle management policies? You can implement data archiving by configuring Azure Blob Storage's lifecycle management policies to transition data to the archive, access tier based on defined rules. This tier offers lower-cost storage for infrequently accessed data. What is the purpose of storage analytics in Azure Storage, and how can it help in monitoring and diagnostics? Storage Analytics collects metrics and logs about the usage and performance of Azure Storage resources. It provides insights into data access patterns, helps identify performance bottlenecks, and assists in troubleshooting issues. How can you ensure secure and authorized access to Azure Storage resources using Azure Active Directory authentication? You can configure Azure Storage resources to allow access only to users and applications authenticated through Azure Active Directory, Azure AD. This enhances security by centralizing authentication and identity management. Explain how to implement data tiering in Azure Blob Storage using the Hierarchical Storage Management (HSM) feature. Azure Blob Storage's Hierarchical Storage Management (HSM) feature allows you to automatically tier data between hot, cool, and archive access tiers based on defined rules. This optimizes costs while maintaining data availability. How can you implement automated data movement from on-premises environments to Azure Blob Storage using Azure Data Factory? Azure Data Factory enables you to create data pipelines that extract data from on-premises sources, transform it if necessary, and load it into Azure Blob Storage. By defining source, transformation, and destination activities, you automate the data movement process. Explain the role of geodisaster recovery in Azure Storage and how it supports business continuity. Geodisaster recovery involves replicating data to a secondary region. In case of a regional disaster, data can be accessed and recovered from the secondary region, ensuring business continuity and data availability. How can you manage and analyze storage usage and costs for Azure Storage resources? Azure Cost Management and Azure Advisor provide insights into storage usage and costs for Azure Storage resources. You can identify underutilized resources, optimize storage allocation, and make informed decisions to control costs. Explain how to use Azure Storage services in conjunction with Azure Logic Apps to automate business processes. Azure Logic Apps allow you to build automated workflows that integrate with various services, including Azure Storage. You can use Logic Apps to trigger actions in response to Azure Storage events, such as new blobs being added to a container.